Best of r/Tales from Retail episode 91. Subscribe for edit videos daily. Medium. I used to be a cashier at this grocery store and this was my first job ever. Anyway, this older man comes into my line to get checkout with a 12-pack of beer. I'm like, alright, cool. Then I noticed he was a little intoxicated because the way he was swaying around, and when he spoke, the words sounded slurred. But either way, you know, I'm trying to be nice, I guess. And I start asking how he is doing. Then this is when I realize I may have messed up. Customer, I'm not doing so okay, honestly. Me, I'm like, all sad, how come? He literally starts crying, just full-blown tears going down his face. I literally just stared at him for a while, not knowing what to do. Like, it was so unexpected, I was just froze up. Like, I literally felt so awkward. Like, how am I supposed to make a grown man stop crying? I didn't know what to do or say. Then he starts telling me about how he was related to one of the girls who got killed because of some gang activity that she was involved with. It was big news in my town because it's just something you would never expect to happen in our town. Plus the way she got murdered was extremely just gruesome and sad. When I say nobody expected it, like nobody did. Anyway, back to the customer. Then I get out that frozen in space moment and I start telling him how extremely sorry for his loss. Like, I felt bad because I didn't know what else to say since I never experienced losing someone in death. I tried my best to console him. Meanwhile, I'm baffled that nobody is looking at him or even paying attention while he literally sobbing. It's either they weren't interested or didn't want to look his way. However, he stops crying out of nowhere and picks up his phone to dial his significant other. He starts hysterically crying again and saying to that person to take him back. That's he's sorry for everything, like he would do anything for them. I don't remember if she picked up or he left a voicemail, but then he makes another call to them. Then his whole mood changes and he get a little violently angry. At this point he yelling at the phone, telling their significant other that they're a cheater. They don't appreciate him. Pretty much cursing them on the phone, calling them a whore. At this point everyone was looking but nobody said anything, like literally says no one says anything. I haven't scanned his 12 beer pack because I'm just honestly so confused on what happening. After I scan it, he keep telling me to put them in the plastic bag. I'm like, sir, it doesn't fit. He told me to try harder, but these bags were meant like small food items, you know, the plastic ones. But then he like, whatever, I'll just carry it. I'm still like, WTF is happening? Then he proceeds to pay and leave the store, still talking on the phone. Thanks for reading. Wrote this on a phone, LOL. Thank you. Next. So this lady came into the gas station I work at, decided to get some money orders, and I offer to scan her rewards card so she can get points. Everything is fine and good. After I cash her out for the money orders, she says that she is gonna buy something else and leaves her rewards card on the counter. Comes back over with a 30-pack of beer. Instead of offering to scan her rewards card, I just pick it up and scan it before I scan the beer. I thought I was doing her a favor, but she got so upset at me. She started screaming at me while interrupting my calm efforts to get her to leave the store. Thank you. Next. I work in a sporting goods chain that also sells firearms. Last Tuesday another manager and I were working the closing shift. It had been relatively slow that day and we had just gotten our weekly shipment of stock a few hours earlier. As per usual, I was breaking down the shipment and sorting it by department. I also was in charge of the firearms counter that evening. Around 7:30 I peek my head out from the stockroom and see a woman looking at the handguns, so I approach her and ask, "Do you need any assistance?" She tells me she'd like to see the one handgun. It was a little .22 Derringer. I open up the case, check her and hand her the gun to look at. She looks at it for a few seconds and says she wants to purchase it. I grab the forms and start filling out my portion. She then begins to fill out her section but messes up the date. So I have her correct it and initial and date it as is required. She then makes a second mistake in her company's address box but wrote so big there was no room to correct it. I grab a new form and start over but warn her if she messes up again I will have to deny the sale. She finishes the paperwork and I send her to the register to pay her background check fee. I then call the background check number to run the check. I get through pretty quick and give her information to the person running the check. I am then put on hold while the check is being processed. The other manager walks by and says, "I cannot believe you started a gun sale this late, usually I stop them at 7. I respond with, Oh, this shouldn't take too long. The woman comes back with her receipt. However, I am still on hold. It's not 8:20 and I have been on hold for 30 minutes. Finally they come back on the phone only to say they are still doing research and to continue to hold. Another 15 minutes go by and again they come back on the phone. This time they have me give some more information and tell me they are experiencing technical issues. The other manager who came over about 20 minutes ago wondering what was taking so long told me that she thinks the cops will be here soon. I was like, what? No way, they're probably just backed up. Well, sure enough, 5 minutes later 2 officers come walking up to the counter. The background check person comes back on the phone and asks to speak to the officers, so I head over the phone. They radio some information and then after 2 minutes of silence someone over the radio says, "Book her." They put her in cuffs, took my information down in case it goes to court and took her out. They thanked me and told me to have a good night. About 30 seconds later over the PA system a co-worker says Nix is on line 1. I answer it and the person says, "Just to make it clear, the gun sale is denied." I thank him and hang up and the other manager looks at me and says, "I told you they'd be here. Thank you." Next. So I work at a train station. The police had to come and remove a passenger from the train when it arrived in my city because he was caught shooting up with needles and endangering other passengers. Police take him off the train and arrest him. Police leave a jacket, a roll of toilet paper, and a bunch of dirty used needles all over the platform when they take him away. The customer service/ticket agents go outside and very gingerly put everything in a garbage bag and call the police. They come back to get the bag of needles and instead tell us to throw it in the dumpster. Doesn't seem like proper protocol. They come back a bit later and want to get our names for the police report. I ask what ended up happening. He said that the guy they arrested had a live pet rat in his pants. Obviously jail won't accept pets and the police didn't know what to do with the rat, so they just dropped the guy off at the homeless shelter and called it a night. So, moral of the story, keep a strange pet with you and you may or may not be saved from jail. Thank you. Next. This was probably a couple months ago, but I work for a large grocery store company and had recently been moved to the pharmacy to become a pharmacy tech. Well, one day, I encountered a guy that was probably in his 50s or 60s that was coming to pick his wife's medicine up. He was a rough looking dude with bloodshot eyes, bags under his eyes, and rough looking skin. In our pharmacy we ask for the patient's birthday first before we get their name for some reason, so I ask him for her birthday. The guy mumbles something completely incoherent, so I ask him to repeat it and he says it in the same exact way. So I ask him to repeat it for me one more time and he looks up at me and shouts his wife's name. Unfortunately that's not good enough for us to go ahead and pull up the profile and we have to have their birthday, but I go ahead and search for her name but wait for him to tell me the birthday. Then I told him to give me the birthday again and he finally said one that I could hear but it wasn't even her birthday. So I'm like, unfortunately that's not her birthday, so maybe try again. So he responds with, "God damn it, how many times do I have to repeat myself? They all know me around here." At this point I kind of just snap and my initial response in my head was, if you would speak up and actually know your wife's birthday you wouldn't have to, but I bit my tongue before it came out. So I recollected myself and just straight up told him her birthday. So I pull up her profile and sure enough, his wife's meds were oxycodones. To sell controlled meds, we have to see the ID of whomever is picking it up. So I ask for his ID and he says, "Are you fucking kidding me? They all know me around here." So I said, "Well, I'm new so I don't, and regardless of whether I know you or not I'll still need to see your ID to sell this." And so he cooperates and gets out his ID. But he flung it at me and gave me a stare. So I grabbed it and stared back at him for a hot second until he looked away, since I had a thick counter in between me and him. I put in all the information I need to so I could get the meds and sell it to him, and at this point I'm shaking with anger, which is very much unlike my usual self. So I go and find the meds off the holding area and I walk over to the pharmacist and asked him if he would take over for me because I was so overwhelmingly angry. Apparently, he had apologized to the pharmacist, which is fine, but man, I did not want to sell oxycodone to anyone who acts like that, looks like that, and doesn't even know their wife's birthday. Thank you. Next. Months ago a woman entered the big box membership store I work at. There has always been a policy of asking for a membership card as a way of stopping theft. Most people we have caught stealing don't have a valid membership. Last fall the company made signs for stores to display at the entrance that inform you on the different ways you can show valid membership: mobile app, membership card, and store credit card. A woman came in and apparently was curiously as to why we checked for membership cards. Not very difficult to flash the card and go on your way. By the time she is ready to leave, she goes through a self-checkout register. We make a habit of asking customers to transfer to a second basket. It allows us to free up the baskets for the next person to walk in, plus makes sure you rung up each item. Well, this woman refused and I heard about it over the radio. I'm a janitor, so I was taking out trash from the exit door. The person at the door is asked to verify the number of items. Oftentimes if an item is missing from the receipt, the customer just forgot to scan it. When she reaches the door, she asks why we want to see her membership card when entering the building. The person at the door kindly explains why. I was puzzled to the nature of the question, seeing she was leaving the store. Suddenly I notice the tone in this woman's voice feels unfriendly. I was afraid she might get angry, but thankfully she was calm. However, I flash a glance at my coworker to subtly indicate my unease. She leaves and I continue with the trash. A mere 2 minutes later the woman returns and walks up behind me. I got very startled and she tells me she didn't want to make it seem like she was trying to steal from us. Apparently there are people who assume for reasons that store employees think you are stealing by default. Thank you. Next. This happened years ago during my retail days. Some of the details are a little fuzzy, so sorry in advance. TLDR at the bottom. The company I worked for had a variety of annoying policies, one of which being if a customer wants to buy alcohol, you as the cashier are required to check their ID. Doesn't matter how young or old they look. No ID, no booze. The register will actually block you from proceeding with the transaction without entering in their birth date. Most people laughed it off. Older women always became so giddy and flattered. Can't tell you how many times I've heard I haven't been carded in decades. However, some people thought it was absurd that I would have the audacity to ask them. I'd usually just shrug then point to the sign we had by the register that stated the policy. People would often complain about how dumb of a rule that was, but then just do it because why fight? Not always though. One day a white guy in maybe his late 50s walks up to my register with his 2 sons. Both look to be in their early 20s. I greeted them and in my retail voice asked them if their shopping experience was pleasant today. The guy kinda mumbles something about it being fine enough, then places some beer on the counter. I scan the first one. Register asks for birth date. I ask the gentleman to see his ID to verify age. Keep in mind he clearly is of age. He did not like me asking this though. Excuse me, but why the hell do you want to see my ID? Store policy. Sorry. My grey hairs are enough of an ID. Are you f***ing stupid? TBH, this was the first time I'd ever had a customer swear at me, so I was a little caught off guard. I pointed to the sign stating the policy. This sent him into a major hissy fit, screaming about how dare I ask him and you're just a BTCH, aren't you? The 2 younger guys looked absolutely mortified. At this point I'm thinking, dude, I do not get paid enough to deal with whatever is going on with you, so I called my supervisor up to talk to him. Supervisor gets to the register, asks what's going on. This idiot is telling me I needed to buy my beer. Yes, that's company policy. She is doing her job correctly and responsibly by asking you. Sorry for your inconvenience, sir. At this point the guy picks up one of the bottles of beer and smashes it on the ground, then storms out. One of the younger guys follows him out immediately. The other waits a moment before telling me that his dad doesn't carry his ID with him because he is old enough that he doesn't need to do that. Despite that breaking the law because you're supposed to always carry your license when you drive. Anyway, that was a fun day, but guess who got to take an extra long break that day? I don't miss retail. TLDR. Guy wants me to break store policy and sell him beer. Thinks screaming at me will change my mind. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. He smashes a bottle of beer then storms out. Edit for clarification.